Hello everyone, welcome back to This Is Why We Stand. My name is Joe Archino, and today marks the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Guadalcanal. Now, this was the first major offensive and decisive victory for the Allies in the Pacific theater of World War II, and many consider it to be the turning point of the Pacific War. So without any further ado, let's get right into things. On August 7th, 1942, 6,000 Marines landed on Guadalcanal and quickly seized the island's airfield. While the U.S. had great initial success that caught the Japanese off guard, there was bitter fighting that ensued for 6 months. So, Guadalcanal campaign starts on August 7, 1942, and it goes until February 9th, 1943. By the end of the battle, the Japanese had lost 2/3 of the 31,400 troops committed to the island. So they certainly paid a very big price. And then when you look on the American side of things, on the ground level, certainly it wasn't as bad. The U.S. Marines and U.S. Army lost less than 2,000 soldiers out of nearly 60,000 deployed troops. So the fighting between Japanese ground troops and American ground troops certainly swung in the Americans' favor based on the results that we have and based on what history tells us. Japan also suffered heavy losses to elite naval operators, and this combined with the losses that they had previously suffered that June at the Battle of Midway was something that was catastrophic moving forward in the war. And that's something many historians really look at as being one of the most important things to take away from the Battle of Guadalcanal. 13 members of the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps were awarded the Medal of Honor for valor during the Guadalcanal campaign. Douglas A. Monroe was one of them. He is to this day the only member of the United States Coast Guard to be a recipient of the Medal of Honor. He was posthumously awarded it, and if you would like to read more about him, I just wrote an article about him and the actions that led to him being awarded the Medal of Honor. You can find that on thisiswhywestand.net. But continuing further, the Guadalcanal campaign was a total effort. Every branch of the U.S. military fought in the battle. The Marines did most of the heavy lifting, capturing and holding ground. The Army provided infantry to assist the Marines in the landings and sent planes and pilots to operate out of Henderson Field, which was the air base on the island. And then the Navy provided most of the logistics, the shore bombardments, and aviation support. And then the Coast Guard moved troop transport vessels and helped in the landings as well. So all branches were working together, and I think when you understand Guadalcanal, it really was something that they had to do. Everyone was dependent on one another because Guadalcanal was fought on at sea, in the air, and on land. During the campaign, there were 3 major land battles, 7 naval battles, and constant aerial dogfighting. And a lot of times when we study battles in history, they are fought in one primary area, and Guadalcanal is one of those interesting ones where it really was a little bit everywhere. There were major components on the ground, major components of it in the air, and then major components of it at sea. So as you can see, when I said that every branch of the U.S. military fought in this battle, they were all dependent on one another, and it was very important to the overall outcome and success. And I talked a little bit about the losses from the ground perspective, but just to give you a little bit of a perspective on what it came to from the naval front, both sides lost about 24 warships during the Guadalcanal campaign, so it was a very costly one, certainly. Once captured and cleared, Guadalcanal became a launching point for the U.S. military as they embarked on an island-hopping campaign, fighting their way to the Japanese homeland. One of the things that you also take away from Guadalcanal is the learning experience. From hard experience, the Americans had learned a great deal about jungle fighting during the Guadalcanal campaign, and I think certainly when you look at this being the first major offensive and decisive victory for the Allies, there was many, many lessons learned from this campaign, and as we look back 75 years later, it's important that we never forget this very important battle, this important campaign, and the role it played in the inevitable outcome of the Pacific theater of World War II. But for more on Guadalcanal, for more on military history, I welcome everyone to visit thisiswhywestand.net. Until the next time, Joe Archino here, and I'll see everybody in the next episode.